I'm not a fan of art shows. The constant coverage of celebrity divorces and affairs isn't just interesting, it's bland. Yet there was one occasion when I couldn't stop laughing. I'm Laura, 37 years old, working twice a week at a local cafe. My husband, Michael, is an ordinary office worker, a year older than me. We have one son, Ethan, who's a high school senior currently in his rebellious phase. Though he doesn't share much, my son seems to have a goal, studying hard every day. He's not particularly academic, but I'm proud of his efforts. You might think ours is just a regular family. However, my husband had a rough past with money and women. He loved gambling, often spending his salary on it. On bad days, he'd come home for a meal. On good days, he'd lavish it on other women. After our marriage, he surprisingly quit gambling. Our child was born soon after, and I thought he had reformed. But change isn't that simple. I began to realize it after that accident happened. My father was involved in an unexpected accident, and since then he has been living in a wheelchair. Gradually, something started to break down. My father was the president of a company with 300 employees. While the stereotype of a company president might be one of arrogance, that was never the case with my father. He was always kind. Despite his busy work schedule, he made time for family dinners every evening. On birthdays, he would bake homemade cakes. I was born when my father was 30, and he loved and cherished me deeply. The accident devastated me. Out of concern, my husband and I frequently visited the hospital. Are you okay, Laura? It must be hard caring for your husband alone. Thank you. Having you here is a relief. Sorry for the trouble. It's no trouble. We're family after all. Thank you truly. My husband seemed to care for my mother, but in hindsight, it was only her. My mother is what you might call a rags to riches success story. She's 10 years younger than my father. I remember hearing that my father fell in love with her at first sight when I was young. Indeed, she was very beautiful, and I recall feeling proud during school visit days. But wait, that pride lasted only until the early years of elementary school. As I got older, I became embarrassed by my mother's revealing clothes. When I overheard whispers like, "Whose mom is that?" Lo, I wanted to tell her to go home. A few days after my father was hospitalized, my husband said, "I'm going to visit him alone today." Why? I'll come too. Your mother seems to have something difficult to discuss that she can't tell you. A problem she can't tell me. Yay, I'll go and see. With that, my husband went to visit my father alone that day. For some reason, he didn't come back the next day. When my husband returned, I asked him why he didn't come back. He only gave a vague response. Your mother is going through a hard time. But it didn't end there. I'm worried. She seems down. She says she can't even eat unless I'm there. These were the reasons my husband gave for visiting my mother. My husband returned with gifts each time he visited, saying she bought me a new watch as a thank you, or she got me a suit for work as a thank you for listening to her. He claimed these were presents of gratitude. Naturally, this made me angry, and I couldn't help but express my anger towards my husband. Dad's in the hospital, and what are you doing? Aren't you worried about him? Of course I'm worried, but I'm also concerned about your mother. Right, worried about Mom. If you're just worried, there's no need to accept such gifts, right? I can't help it. Your mother insists on giving them to me. Can't help it? What do you mean? That money you're spending is Dad's. You're not visiting Mom because you're worried. You're just pretending to be concerned to get something in return, right? Don't be ridiculous. I'm taking time off work to see her. There's nothing wrong with accepting a gift. That's when I remembered. That's the kind of person my husband is. After that, our conversations as a couple ceased. One day, when I visited Dad alone, I asked him, "Has Michael been visiting you recently?" "No, not at all. He's busy with work. It can't be helped." "I see. And Mom, your mother hasn't been visiting much either." "Is that so? But I'm happy that you and Ethan visit." It was supposed to be a secret. Sometimes Ethan studies here because he's worried about his grandpa. But keep it a secret. If he knows I told you, he might not come anymore. Yeah, I understand. Also, I heard from the nurse that you're being discharged tomorrow. That's great. Yes, I still want to work. I can't stay here forever. Don't overdo it, okay? I know. Thank you. Learning about Dad's discharge and my son's visits lifted my spirits, but the good feeling didn't last long. The next day, I muttered to my husband, Dad's getting discharged today, so I'm going to the hospital. My husband glanced at me and just replied, Him. I thought, what do you mean? But today was Dad's discharge day. I decided not to waste energy on a pointless argument and left for the hospital. When I arrived at Dade's room, my mother was nowhere to be seen. Huh? Where's Mom? She hasn't come. She said she would be here for the discharge. Really? Yeah, I wonder what happened. I had a bad feeling. I'll try calling. No, it's fine. She must be at home. Maybe she's preparing a feast to celebrate my return. All right, let's go home then. I returned home with my father, expecting to find my mother waiting there. I'm home. The house remains silent. This house is big, isn't it? Lol, I'm home. Still, come, please. Completely not a hint of sound. My mother was not there. At that moment, my phone rang. It was my son, Owen, just back from cram school. Mom, the stuff is gone. He was panicking. What stuff is gone? Whose stuff? Dad's. My heart almost stopped. After calming my panicked son, I ended the call. What happened? Nothing. It's nothing. It's not nothing. I'm your father. How many years do you think I've known you? At that moment, I broke down and cried. The accumulated anxiety and pent-up emotions overflowed. My father stayed by my side in silence until I stopped crying. He was not just kind, but also very strong. After I calmed down, we looked around the room together. While the large items like furniture were still there, some things were missing. Jewelry, a bank card, and the car. I couldn't, or rather didn't want to, accept the reality that my mother had run away with another man, taking only the money without saying anything. She had left my father. Go back to Owen's place today. Why, Dad? Why aren't you searching for Mom? No point in searching. What's done is done. Why? You did so much for Mom. Yes, maybe I did. But Mom ran away. She abandoned you. Yes, she did. Aren't you angry? Aren't you sad? I feel anger and sadness. But, what? Because she gave birth to Laura and we have Owen. Hearing this, I cried different tears than before. My father and son are my responsibility, tears of resolve. I returned to my home and faced reality. My son, now in high school, was informed of everything that was happening. His expression clouded for a moment, but not for long. My son and I moved in with my father. We tried to forget my mother and husband and live happily. It wasn't easy from the start, but we cared for each other and helped each other through. When my son got into university, we celebrated with a trip to Hawaii. When my son started living alone, my father wanted to buy him an apartment, but we managed to stop him. When my son came of age, the three of us drank the most expensive liquor in our house and had a party with every significant event in my son's life. We spent time together. 5 years of happiness passed, and then my father passed away quietly. My son and I cried more than ever before. What my father had left us was immeasurably valuable. We wanted to send him off quietly, but at the funeral home, a voice I thought I'd never hear again rang out. Laura, long time no see. It's been a while, Laura. It was my long-lost mother and husband. They must have heard about my father's passing. Laura, you look well. It's a pity about your father. Well, he was old, right? Why did you come? It's only natural for a wife to attend her husband's funeral, right? Yeah, yes. I was worried about Laura. You loved your father, didn't you? Are you okay? I'm fine. Please leave. What are you saying to your mother who came all the way here? Mother, after you abandoned your husband in a wheelchair and took my husband, what kind of mother are you? How dare you show your face here? Don't be so angry. We have something important to discuss. Important? There's nothing to discuss. It might not be important to you, but it is to me. It's about inheritance. I came to discuss inheritance. What? So about inheritance, we're family, right? That's why I came to talk about it. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh at the funeral home, even though I knew it was inappropriate. It was exactly as my father had said. I explained to the absurd couple, trying to contain my laughter. There won't be any inheritance for you. Why? We never filed for divorce, so it should be possible. Mom listened carefully. Dad had anticipated something like this might happen and left a will. It states that all of Dad's inheritance will go to me and my son. That's invalid. It's not invalid. A lawyer was consulted, and everything was done properly. So I won't get a single penny. That's right. What about the company? What happens to the company? The same. The will states that the company is to be passed on to my son in the future. You're lying. Show me that will. I'd rather not, in case it gets destroyed. Wait a minute. We're still married. I have a right to inherit, don't I? Are you kidding me? Of course you don't. Why not? I don't want to discuss this any further. A lawyer will explain everything to you later, so please leave. Many people who admired my father were present at the funeral home. They looked at the two with disdain. Then a lawyer called by my son hurried over. My son probably thought it was a hopeless case, as Michael turned his back to me. I said loudly, as if talking to myself, Michael, please also fill out the divorce papers. You'll be hearing from the lawyer. Also, I will be requesting compensation for stolen money and goods from both of you. This will be the last time, but please don't ever come to see us again. We're strangers now. Even in death, my father continued to protect us, thanks to his will and the lawyer he had arranged. As for what happened next, my mother, who had assumed she would inherit, ended up penniless. With no experience in earning her own living, she couldn't find a job easily and spent her days at a job center. She was evicted from her previous residence for failing to pay rent and now lives alone in a shabby apartment. Yes, my mother was spectacularly abandoned by Michael. His only reason for the affair and leaving was money. He stayed because of the luxury and the freedom to gamble. That was it. Now penniless and having lost her beauty, my mother was no longer needed by him. Mother was foolish. If she had valued my father who cherished her so much, none of this would have happened. Utterly foolish. As for the ex-husband, he quit his job soon after leaving and lived off my mother with no savings and now desperately looking for a job, mainly to pay compensation. However, the world is a small place. He's been turned away from job interviews everywhere. It's no surprise. No company associated with my father would employ him. No one extends a hand to someone who hasn't lived an honorable life. It's his own doing. Enough about those two. As for me, I still live in the house I shared with my father, leading a comfortable life. My son is working hard, hoping to take over my father's company. He often says he wants to be like his grandfather. It has been his goal since high school. I want my son to become a man like my father, but he still has a lot to learn. However, I believe he will get there. Inspired by my son, I've decided to fulfill my long-held dream of opening my own cafe. I'm busy every day, learning about coffee and practicing baking cakes. When I bake, I remember the taste of the cakes my father made for my birthdays. They weren't incredibly delicious, but they were simple cakes full of love. I'm planning to make a cafe that serves such cakes. Dad, I'm happy now. As I embarked on the journey of opening my own cafe, I found solace in the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the warmth of the oven baking cakes. The memories of my father's simple yet heartfelt creations fueled my passion. Each day was a step closer to realizing the dream that had been put on hold for so long. My son Ethan continued to thrive, both in his academic pursuits and his determination to uphold the legacy of my father's company. His dedication mirrored the values instilled by my father. We faced challenges together, learning and growing as a family. The cafe became a place where people gathered not only for coffee and cakes, but also for the shared stories and connections that formed within its walls. It was a testament to the resilience and strength that can emerge from even the most challenging circumstances. 5 years passed since my father's departure, and the cafe had become a thriving hub in the community. We celebrated its success with a sense of gratitude for the support we received. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee now mingled with laughter and conversations, creating an atmosphere that reflected the love and care we had for each other. One day, as I stood behind the counter, a familiar face walked in. It was Ethan, now a young man, with a confident smile on his face. "Mom, the company is doing well, and I've learned so much," he said. I felt a swell of pride and joy. The struggles we faced together had strengthened our bond, and I knew my father would have been proud. In that moment, I realized the power of resilience and the importance of forging ahead, even in the face of adversity. Life had come full circle, from the challenges of the past to the triumphs of the present. The cafe stood not just as a place of business, but as a symbol of our ability to overcome, rebuild, and find happiness once again. As I glanced around, taking in the laughter and camaraderie of the customers, I couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment. The journey from heartbreak to healing had been long and arduous, but it had led us to a place of peace and fulfillment. My son and I had not only survived but thrived, creating a new chapter in our lives filled with love, determination, and the aromatic essence of freshly brewed coffee, a reminder that even after the darkest nights, the sun can rise again, bringing with it the promise of a new day.